Okay. It looks like we are back live again. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties. And so we're going to just pick our conversation back up. And we were just talking about some of those things that we hear people say that sometimes when they think they're helpful, and sometimes when it's not the most helpful thing to indeed say to someone who is actually grieving. And so I just want to ask Dr. Strider, is there in your line of work, is there any way, how would you best describe what grief means? What can you give us a definition of what grief actually means, and how it impacts and affects people in whatever capacity that you give us that definition?
Well, of the real definition of grief, it's that it is a real and natural emotion, right?
Hmm.
So, like I said before, everybody grieves. Everybody grieves, something tangible, intangible, and eventually everyone will grieve someone. But it is a
Hmm.
real and natural emotion. It can be oftentimes, one of the things that we're talking about, some of the unspoken truths about grief is that some of the unspoken truths about grief is that grief is not always sad, right?
Right.
I can grieve a person and not be
Hmm.
sad,
Hmm. Hmm.
so
Hmm.
those are things that kind of cause us, because we're trying to conform to what society has told us. So
Come on.
society has told us that grief, we got to cry, and we got to not be able to get up out the bed, and we got to I can't move on. And then so when a person doesn't feel that,
Hmm.
then they feel there must be something wrong with me, right? Because I don't feel
Right.
that. And
Right.
you don't, so you don't have to feel that. So grief is just that real and natural emotion. It can look like happiness, it can look like sadness, it can look like I'm okay with what
Yes.
has happened, but what it really is that grief is love. And grief is
I've heard
love
that
and
someone
having
has said
loved
that before.
somebody. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And that's why you can grieve tangible and intangible things, right? Because grief is
Mhm.
love. So you
Mhm.
can love people, but you can also love things. You grieve the loss. So grief is loss,
I've
and you
definitely
grieve the
heard
loss.
that. Oh my gosh, and that grief is love. And when I first heard it, it didn't, honestly, if I can be honest, it didn't make a lot of sense to me. Like I had to keep
Right.
saying it over, and I was like, aha, I got it now.
Yeah. Because why do you feel so deeply way down in your heart about
Mhm.
this thing that you're going through, this event that has happened? And it's because grief is love. And the more that you love, the more that you grieve. So
Yes.
it is impossible to think that, if I have spent, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 2 days, 4 hours loving someone,
Mhm.
it is impossible to think that in one day or after the funeral or after the breakup or whatever, that I'm now okay.
Yes.
I've spent, my whole life or that person's whole life.
Mhm.
So if we're talking about kids, or if we're talking about our spouses or whatever, but I've spent all these years and all this time loving this person.
Yeah.
It is not even conceivable that now it's over and that now, I'm not grieving anymore. So grief is love.
Yes.
It's the love you
And
feel.
I know you mentioned something earlier about that sometimes, like, I know my daughter and I used to have these conversations, and we thought it was very weird to us to say, we can't have these conversations with everybody because if we do, they're going to think we're crazy, because we could go from laughing to crying, from crying to laughing in a split second because we were able to have those types of conversations. And we know that in most instances, people think that you're supposed to automatically be depressed, stay depressed, be stuck, stay stuck, have anxiety and stay in that place, when that's not always, if I'm understanding you correctly, that's not always the case.
It's not the case, right? Because grief is also not linear. So, today you're going this way, and then tomorrow you might flip a
Mhm,
turn,
mhm, mhm.
right? Today, because it's sunny, I might feel really great, but tomorrow, because it's sunny, then I might feel a remembrance of, they loved the sun, or oh, they used to like to play in the sun, or remember
Mhm,
that
mhm.
time that we did whatever in the sun. So then that makes me feel a different way. Grief is not linear. And I believe that because we try to make grief be on a certain
Right,
path,
right, right.
is what makes it hard as well, right? So we try to make it be on a path. So in 3 months, I've been here, and so now I should be moving here. Well,
That's
no,
not the case. That's not the case.
that's not the case. It's not the case. And I might move to this other part, but there may be one day that I wake up and I just, the other day I woke up and I thought about, man, I miss my mama.
Yes.
I think I felt a little weepy that whole
Mhm,
day, right? So it was probably one of those days where probably if anybody had said anything, I probably would have cried about it, right?
mhm,
But
mhm,
I
mhm.
understand that that's a natural emotion. I have not forgotten her. I've not
Right.
forgotten my father. My father was a plant lover, right? So every time I look, and he used to come over and take care of all my plants because I was horrible about watering them and all of that. So every time I look at this plant in my corner that's dying because I haven't given it any water or any food or even repotted it, I think about my dad. I think, oh man, he would have come over here and been like, oh, I'm going to the store and, come back with a new pot and, all of this stuff too. So, grief is just not linear. And because we try to make it linear, that also causes, us sometimes a lot more angst.
Yes. So, what I want to do is because we had some issues in the beginning, I want to take a moment to let people know who you are, Dr. Strider. We have Dr. Sonya Strider with us from Stone Mountain, Georgia, and she has lots of expertise. She's a graduate of Virginia Commonwealth University, Medical College of Virginia, and Walden University, where she earned a bachelor's degree in science and medical technology, and also a PhD in community health and health education. And tonight, guys, we're just talking about the unspoken truths of grief. And we know before we went off and had to come back on, we were talking about some things that we know just are, it's not truthing. And it doesn't help the person who is actually grieving. And so, we talked about some things that people say and they don't realize that they're saying, like, what, they're in a better place, and we agreed that that's good for you to say, but it's not good for the person to receive that's actually going through that. And so, Dr. Strider is going to help us and share some more insight with us on tonight of what it looks like to navigate through that grief. So, what I'm going to ask you guys to do is to share and to tag this live for those persons who are struggling with grief. I understand that not everyone wants to get out of the house and to come into a space. So God has led me to do this virtually so that they can sit in the comfort of their home and receive this. And if they don't want it tonight, they can pause it and come back to it tomorrow, whenever
Come
they
back
feel good.
later.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
So we have Dr. Strider, and I definitely, I'm taking a look here. I see someone saying that how they were numb after her grandmother passed and didn't really hit her until her birthday months later. And so that's definitely the case. And so I know with my mom now has been deceased over 30 something years, and I can go days, weeks, and months, and even years to where it's not hard. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, I miss my mama. I
Right.
miss my
Yeah.
mama. Is there a
Yeah.
reason for that you can see, Dr. Strider? Is there what would be your best
I mean,
educated?
again, because it's the grief is love, right? And so we can go through our lives and we can still, one of the things that I like to talk about often is that, this kind of topic I call that grieving while living, right? So,
Mhm,
um,
mhm,
we're still alive, right? So life
mhm.
is for the living. And so you go days and days because you're living your life. You
Mhm.
know, you have things that you are doing, you're living your life, but there's still that little piece, there's still that little void. And there are
Mhm.
certain things that will trigger that memory, you know.
Huh.
So whether it is, you know, sometimes it's a smell, sometimes it's a favorite holiday or a favorite food or a
Mhm.
favorite activity, you know,
Mhm.
just things that you remember that you used to do with your loved one. Sometimes it brings you to tears. A lot of times, as we were saying before we kind of, you know, kind of came back, was that,
Mhm.
you know, it might bring us to, you know, hysterical laughter
Yes.
about, you know,
Yes.
whatever that activity was. You know, you remember that time that we did. And to the viewer who said, you know, they felt numb, you know, well, usually during that time when, you know, a person passes away, and there's all the ceremonial stuff, so you almost don't really get an opportunity to feel until all the ceremonial stuff is
Mhm.
over. You
Mhm.
know, you're planning the funeral, you got family coming in, you know, if you're still trying to work through that time or just trying to live through that time, right? You
Mhm.
got all
Mhm.
this ceremonial stuff and all of these things. You got to meet with this person and meet with that person. You really don't have an opportunity for it to really sink in.
Yes.
And so it's after all the hoopla, which is why they say, you know, a lot of times we talk about that the most important time to support a griever is really after everything has happened and
Mhm.
after there's been the funeral and after there's been all the ceremonial stuff. That's when that griever needs you the most,
Yes.
because
Yeah.
it's the quiet time, right? It's the quiet time. Before that, everybody's coming by. Everybody's
Mhm.
coming by, bring you some chicken
Mhm.
and some rolls and some, you know, everybody's stopping by, bring you some soda and all these things. And then there's all this hustle and bustle, and
Mhm.
then there's nothing, you
Yes.
know. So that's where that, you know, that's when the real time that that griever really needs you,
Yes.
because
Yes.
before that they're busy, you know, before
Mhm.
that they're busy trying, they got to go to this place and that place, and after all that is settled down, that's when they need you. And you know, but you will always have these moments of remembrance, and that's what I call them. And I love to have them, you know, the moments of remembrance where, you know, sometimes I wake up, sometimes I even smell my mother's perfume and I'm like,
Mm.
you know, does that smell like her? You know,
Mhm.
and I love it. You know, sometimes I'm like, you know, thanks for stopping by to see me.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
it's not always bad. I don't it's not always bad, and it's not always it's not always happening to put us in a bad place. I like to encourage people during our monthly support group meetings. We need to take the moment to honor the person we love. When we don't continue to live, it's almost like we have in a sense died with them. A huge piece of us have gone with them. And I know there are sayings people like to say, a part of me left with them when they went. And that's, I believe that's when we stop living. When we stop living our lives and doing the things that we've been purposed to do, because we're human beings, we're going to miss them, we're going to love them, we're going to think about them, we're going to cry. Those things are
always.
expected to happen. And so when we
Yeah,
stop honoring them by showing up for them, have your moment, but still honor them and live out their legacy of whatever that looks like to you.
exactly. And I think that's a wonderful, perfect point, Pam, because you know, I say it all the time. I think I said it earlier. Life is for the living.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, so I say my mother died, but I didn't die,
That's
you
right.
know. And the way that I honor her and the way that I honor all that she, you know, that I feel like she meant to us, to our family, and to so many other people, the way that I honor her is to try to live a good life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the way that I honor her is to try to do things that I know that she would have done. That's one of the reasons why, you know, I started the foundation,
Mm-hmm.
is so that, you know, I can sprinkle a little bit of her along the way as I
Yes.
go. And, you
Yes.
know, and allow other people who may have never, you know, had the opportunity to meet her, and who she may, you know, have never had the opportunity to meet, but to be able to introduce them to who she was.
Yes.
through the work that we do with the foundation. And I think that, now sometimes, we say that, this great big thing has to happen from, turning your pain into this,
Mhm.
your
Mhm.
pain into passion, or your pain. But, that's what it looks like for me. But, and for other people, turning that pain into something meaningful means turning that pain into saying, you know what? I'm going to get up today and I'm
Yes.
going to comb my hair today. And, I'm going to go to the store today.
Mhm. Mhm.
It doesn't have to be grand gestures,
Right.
but I think that finding a way to honor that person that's the most love you can give them, is to find a way to still live a meaningful and productive life. Yes, you miss them. Absolutely. I miss them all the time.
Mhm.
But,
Mhm.
sometimes I find myself saying, oh, look at this, look at that. And because I think about what my mom might, be saying, or what my dad might be saying, or, what this would mean to them, if I were to do this, what this would really mean to them. And then that's how I can keep going.
And I think that's what has motivated me to do the works that I am doing, is because number
Yes. And
one,
you're doing great work. Yes.
I love people, and I don't want to see people stuck on this journey. So, I have lost, I was 8 when my dad passed away. 8 years later, my mom passed away. I've buried two brothers who were older than me, but it was the death of my son that did
Absolutely.
something to me that, oh my God, it did something to me. But I have found something, some grit, on the grit and grace. I found it grieving with grace. As I am grieving, I'm finding grace. God placed grace on me to be able to help others, even as I help myself. I find it as I'm
Absolutely.
helping others that I'm learning how to help myself. You know what, Pam? This is what, while you're sharing this, make sure that you do this too, because we want to make sure that you're getting what you need, that you're not help doing so much to where you think you're helping other people and you're not doing anything for yourself.
Right. Because you can't pour from an empty cup. And when you're pouring so much into other people, and it's almost easy to happen to us in this type of work,
Mm-hmm.
because, I think that because we know what it feels like, that we're so fervently trying to shield other people
Mm-hmm.
from that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you this. What's your professional advice
You know,
to those who isolate themselves and those who are withdrawn from social activities that they used to enjoy? What would be your professional advice to someone that's listening, whether they're listening now or they catch this later, or someone goes to share this? What would be your professional advice to someone who is isolating themselves or withdrawn themselves from things that they used to
Well,
enjoy?
again, life is for the living, and it's hard sometimes to get up after, you've had such a devastating blow. But one of the things that I talk about with my clients as well is it's okay to take things slow. And I think setting goals as to, now
Mhm,
maybe I'm not going to go right back out to doing whatever it was that I used to do every day right after the loss. But, so, in
mhm,
2 weeks, in 1 month, on January, whatever, or on March the 3rd, I'm going to do this. Then you have time to
mhm,
prepare
mhm,
yourself. You also have time to, because a
mhm,
lot of times it's facing people, because I don't know what you're going to say. One of the things we talked about earlier, I don't know
mhm,
what you're going to say. And then I don't know how I'm going to react to what you're going to say. Right. But
mm, mhm,
you
mhm,
can't stay held up, and it's not healthy for you to stay held up. So, just say, I'm going to do one thing. Start small if that's what you need to do, because everybody's not able to, jump right back out into the big pond. Start small. you
right,
know I'm gonna
right,
go to
right,
Bible study, or I'm going to go to, whatever it is, and maybe I'm not, but I'm going to start back,
mhm,
doing some of these things that brought me joy. And I think that once you put yourself in that position,
yeah,
feel the love of people, You start to feel the crave to go back because you'll realize you've been missing it.
That's good. That's good that you once you realize it, you'll be ready to go back to the things that you once what they once enjoyed doing.
And
And
it's
I
going to be
think
different.
sometimes that's one
I
of the
think,
go ahead.
no, I was going to say, I think that, try to go back to these things with the expectation that they are the person.
That's good.
I'm not the
Mm-hmm.
same person I
Mm-hmm.
was when I had a mother. I'm not the same person I
Mm-hmm.
was when I had a living father. So you're different.
Mm-hmm.
You're not the same person you were
Mm-hmm.
when your son was alive. So you can't go back
Yeah, that's definitely the truth. Mm-hmm.
to these things with the
Mm-hmm.
same expectation. You have to live your life like I'm not that same person because grief changes you.
Mm-hmm.
Grief changes you. And I tell people, if you're really lucky, it really changes you and molds you to that person that you are almost, supposed to be. It gives you that purpose. If you're really lucky, you can see and find the purpose in your grief. And you can then lean into it. So often we lean away from it. You can lean into it,
Mm-hmm.
but you're not the same.
Mm-hmm.
And part of what
Mm-hmm.
causes our frustration because we're still trying to be the same person we were, and you're not.
Okay, so I'd like to ask you, because I know and I realize that grief shows up in people in different ways, different forms. Um, just different, all around different. Can we discuss the different emotional and maybe even some physical symptoms of grief in the way that it may show up? Some emotional ways or physical ways that grief could actually show up in someone.
Absolutely. So, there's a what is it? The Kingdom, I think it is this Kirk Franklin and the Kingdom, and they have a song.
Oh, that kingdom took.
Yeah, they have a song that talks about, if you and me. And I often say, if you want to know what grief
Mm-hmm.
looks like, it looks like you and me, right? And that's everybody, right? It
Mm-hmm.
looks like because everybody's grieving
Mm-hmm.
something. But the way it shows up because of how we're socialized to grieve. And we're really
Mm-hmm.
socialized to grieve. It's culturally, it is, sometimes it's your place in the family, it's what you've seen happen, and then that's how we grieve. So it might show up
Mm-hmm.
like I can't get out of the bed, but it may also show
Mm-hmm.
up like I'm never going to stop doing. And it may show up like
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to um, work the most, I'm going to be the most to everybody, right? So it shows
Mm-hmm.
up
Mm-hmm.
sometimes in these great extremes. It may show up in a physical way where you've really grieved yourself sometimes without getting any help with managing your grief.
Mm-hmm.
Ailment, to whether it is, a total physical condition, or a mental
Mm-hmm.
health condition, where you start to suffer from depression or things like that. And we call that kind of an extended and complicated grief, right? So it's where,
I was going to
yeah,
ask
that
about complicated
complicated
grief.
grief where you then start to need other things. When you're in that part of the complicated grief, it's the intense and prolonged. The complicated
Mm-hmm.
grief is
Mm-hmm.
prolonged. And what complicated grief, looks like is, you know, um, persistent, overwhelming sadness. Just I
Mm-hmm.
can't pull out of the sadness. It looks like an intense
Mm-hmm.
or longing um preoccupation with the deceased person, right? So you can't talk
Mm-hmm.
about anything else but that or that experience. Um, Oftentimes, difficulty accepting the loss or the feeling as, the feelings that you get with the loss, not being able to work through those. Here's the one we just kind of talked about: avoiding people, places, things, and conversations. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
numbness. So that complicated grief can feel like numbness. Like I just don't know what to do or say, and I can't get it together. Or destructive behaviors that could be eating too. Some people result to other things, shopping, spending a lot of money, um, other
Mhm.
kind of at-risk behaviors. All of that.
Mhm. Mhm.
Grief looks like all of that when you let it go so long that you don't, work through it and try to work through it. It could then mean that, you
And
need a much more intense kind of, therapy than what we kind of do in the grief recovery network or in things like grief share and things like that. But
mhm.
grief can also look like, I said earlier, grief can also look like happiness. It
Yes.
can also look like, I'm grieving, but I'm still okay. It can look like a
I
lot of
know
things.
one of the things that I've shared with people is if you don't want to go a particular route, it could be that you're still
Yep.
grieving. If you don't want to have a specific conversation, it could be that you're grieving and you just don't
Yeah.
realize it. And so, it's those things that sometimes are a struggle. There is a question that someone had. It said, they're asking, how about the ones that don't grieve because they are the one that have to handle the business and it has to get done?
So, speak. So here's the thing. You will grieve one way or the other. So you can
Hmm.
tell yourself, I don't have time to grieve, or you can give yourself permission to grieve.
Permission.
You can give
Hmm.
yourself permission to not be okay. Now, just
Hmm.
like I said, if you are the one that handles everything, and relying on you and looking to you to do these things, that's where you start to set your boundary. You know,
Yeah.
I right
Yeah.
now I need to.
You don't have to be the strong
Yeah,
one. You don't have to be the strong one because strong people need to grieve too.
right. I need my boundary, or I can remember when, kind of planning things for my mom's service, and there was this and that, and one day there were all these people coming over, and one day I just felt like I can't do this today. I think I pulled up to the
Yeah.
house and there were, like lots of cars and there were people outside, and I just turned around, went in a restaurant, sat down, and had myself a meal, me, myself, and I, right? Because I don't want to talk about
Mhm.
it today.
Mhm.
I don't want anybody to ask me what
Mhm.
happened because I'm not going to relive that and recount that today. So to the person who says,
Mhm.
well, I'm the one and I don't have time to grieve, I say you absolutely have time to grieve because you will grieve one way or the other. So you will
Yeah, and
grieve now or you will grieve later, and later it will probably manifest itself.
it's gonna cost
Yes,
you differently.
absolutely.
Yep.
It will cost you a lot.
Um, I know that I often tell people take the time to grieve. Grieve in the moment. Don't let it pass you. Don't let it get too far past you. Don't let it be, even if you're the oldest, if you're the baby and they expect you to be the oldest, it is important, it is necessary that you take the time and that you take the moment to grieve, because as you said, if you don't grieve now, something is going to happen later, and most likely it's going to manifest differently.
It is going to
It's
manifest.
going
It's
to
going to show
manifest
up. It will,
whether
and
you let it
that's
go.
why, because we often don't take the time to grieve things and then we just keep going. So we just keep going. And then it's when that little thing happens that you totally fall apart and you can't figure out why you've fallen apart about this little thing. Well, it's because because grief is also a compound emotion, right? So it's a
Mhm,
compound
mhm,
emotion. So there are all these things that have stacked up. So when you finally,
mhm.
when it's like that Jenga game, when you pull the little pieces out,
Hold it.
sometimes you pull them out
Mhm.
good and the whole structure stays and you can pull it out fast enough. Other times you don't quite get it and something little tilts and then it all comes falling down. That's grief. So you're like,
Yeah.
I only did this. Why? did this whole thing fall down? But that's because you never dealt with any of the
Mhm.
other stuff. You never,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
wonder why your
Mhm.
credit card bills are so high because you're shopping, because you're trying to mask the pain.
Mhm. Mhm. And and I've shared with people throughout my time of being able to work with them in grief support of how important it is to take care of you first, because if you don't take care of you, then if they're depending on you to handle it, then who's going to take care of you when you fall apart? As the Jenga game, all the pieces come crumbling
Yep,
down. Nobody is there because they're expecting you to be the strong one. What you mean? But it is necessary for us to take the moment that we need to actually
it is.
grieve.
And one of the things that I tell people all the time is tell people what you need. Set your boundary. You can't dump on me today. Nope, I can't do that today. Or, I don't want to
I'm
talk
not sure
about
if
it.
my sister is watching. I'm not sure if she's watching or not, but I've had to tell her, nope, 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 not today. I can't.
Right,
My cup is full, or either it's half empty, half full, but this is not what
right,
I want to feel it
right.
today. I can't do it. I can't do it. And that's okay. It is okay to set those boundaries and not allow them to put more on you than what you're willing. It's not that I can't handle it. I don't want to
I
handle it. I
don't,
don't want to
right,
deal
because
with that.
sometimes, right, it's not that I can't do it, I don't want to. And sometimes, not sometimes, but all the time, we have to tell people, because when people are so often and so used to coming to you, it's just second nature. So they don't necessarily even really think about the fact that, well, maybe she's grieving, because they've also seen you as this person who has handled this, and this. So it never really dawns on
Hmm.
people that you are having a hard time, that you are, having
That's right.
difficulty, dealing with these things. So that's why it is so important to advocate for yourself while you are trying to take care of everybody
Hmm.
else. You have to say, not
Not today. Not today. Not today. Um, yes. Yes.
you know,
Yes.
for to you today because I'm not thinking clear. And so I think those are things that are very important.
I see someone made a comment. They say these days I say I don't
The
have the bandwidth. I know
Absolutely,
that's
my
right.
camera gonna cut off real soon.
We have to be honest with people because it's not, and I think there are times that they don't mean any harm, as you mentioned. That's just what they're accustomed to doing. So we have to relay the foundation. Listen, this is how it's going to go. And this is what I'm going to do, and when I've had enough, this is
This is
all.
it.
I'm not doing anymore. This is it. I've had someone to tell me that she's had family members to have to make appointments with her, and if it's not on the schedule, I'm
Right,
not talking
right.
today. I'm not doing it
Yeah.
today,
And sometimes I tell people,
and
just
that's
text
okay.
me what, like, don't leave me a message and say, call me. Text me whatever it is that you want, because that's going to determine whether or not I'm going to be able to call you back today or later on, right? Because don't be like,
Right,
call me and then I pick up because I'm already not feeling my best. Then I'm blindsided. And and then you're
right,
dumping on me,
right.
and then I'm blindsided. So, if this is an extensive conversation, I'm gonna have to do that tomorrow,
Mm-hmm,
not today. And
mm-hmm,
I think,
mm-hmm,
we just have to
mm-hmm.
advocate for ourselves. We have to say, I don't have the bandwidth, I can't do it today. And sometimes it's not that I can't do it, I don't want to.
I don't want to do it.
Maybe
I don't
tomorrow.
want to do it. You know, it's like, nope, I
Yeah.
don't want to do this. I don't want to do it, and I'm not going to do it, and I'm going to be okay. There was a time to where it bothered me, but after I went through what I went through with losing my son, things shifted and
Changes
changed for me. Like, I'm going to choose where I'm
your
going to spend my
perspective.
time. I'm going to choose where I want to spend my time, and that's how it
Yep.
is these days.
It changes your perspective. And that's why I say that grief changes you. It makes you do things that
Mhm.
you didn't think you would do. You would say, oh no, I could never tell people that I'm busy, or I'm not going to do this, or I could, never. But grief, will put a lot of things into perspective that, if we really, I used to never, I didn't understand it until I went through it. When people
Right.
be like, oh, after their whatever happened and then they changed, or, you know, after her husband died, or after his wife died, or after they, whatever happened, then they changed. But grief changes you.
It
It
does. It
changes you.
does. It
Yeah.
does. It
Yeah.
does. And so I know for those of you who are just tuning in, we're going to be ending shortly. So if there are any specific questions that you have for Dr. Strider, please put those in the chat and share this for someone who may need it at a later time that may not be watching tonight. Tag them so that they can go back and look at it, because there's some real great things. We're going to continue this conversation. It's going to be done monthly, the last Thursday of the month. Typically, it will be at 6:30, but there's some other things that came up today, and even that got shifted around with something else that took place today.
Yeah.
But we're going to do this. God has called me to offer Anchored by Grace once a month, a virtual platform for people that are all over the country, all over the world, who need to tune in and get this information, who may not be ready to come into to see a therapist, see a counselor, may not
Right.
be ready to be a part of grief support, but we can meet them where they are in the comfort of their own homes. No one has to be around them. They don't have to be ashamed. They don't have to feel like, you know what, this is too much for me. They can put it on, pause it, stop it, come back to it, do whatever they want to do. But what I do know is that God has graced me in my time of grief. And I believe that He will do the same thing for anyone else who needs grace to journey through this place called grief, because it's not the easiest thing, but we can do it. You can make it. I would not have made it without the grace of God. I would not have made it without the strength of God. I am who I am today only by the grace of God. And for that, I give Him glory and I give Him praise.
Absolutely.
Yes, yes, yes. And so we will do this again. As I mentioned, next month on the last Thursday of the month. I'm not sure what date that is. Let me take a look, and we'll be highlighting who our speaker will be. That's on the 27th of March. The 27th of March, we will be doing that. And also, if you are local, if you are here local, we will be hosting our in-person grief support on March the 8th. That's not this Saturday. Typically, we do it the first Saturday, but we had to move it to the second Saturday. So March 8th at 11 a.m. You can reach out to us via our website, which is www.weareekg.com. And so I'm looking to see if there are any questions for you, Dr. Strider. And if not, I'm gonna ask that you just give us a last minute something that you would want to leave the viewers with.
Absolutely. I think the last thing that I would leave for the viewers is that you are absolutely worth it. You may have lost someone that you love. You are going through. Right now, I think, our nation is grieving. So many people are undergoing things, losing jobs and, security and all of that. And that's what grief is, right? So grief is the loss of security, it's the loss of familiarity, but you owe it to yourself to work on your grief. You owe it to yourself to say, I am not okay. You owe it to yourself, and you are most definitely worthy of being able to live a good life. Happiness will come again, even if you are now, feeling like I am never going to feel
Mhm.
like I used to feel. Well, the truth about that is you're not. You're not going to be who you were before this horrific thing happened, but you can still be a good person.
That's
You
right.
can still live a good life. You will still find joy. I'm not saying you're going to wake up the next day with it, but you have to be intentional about finding it, because happiness really is a choice. And if you wake up and say, Today, about one thing. I'm not saying you're going to be turning somersaults and, jumping up and down every single day, because you're not. I mean, that's just
Mhm,
just
mhm.
reality. But if you're looking for, I always, my brunch is called Beyond the Sunshine. And I always tell people that I named it that because the one thing that really is constant is that the sun always shines. It doesn't
Yes.
shine the same amount, it's not the same brightness every day, right? But one of the things that I noticed was that the sun shines brightest after there's been, like, if, and I know down there in New Orleans, you in Louisiana, you have really bad storms like we have here. Pay attention to the sun after those storms. After they are, the most devastating of hurricanes or tornadoes or, torrential rains, that next day, and sometimes even that day, and sometimes even while it's occurring, the
Mhm.
sun is the brightest. If
Wow.
you pay attention to how bright the sun shines after that horrific, storm or whatever, sometimes you go out and then you can see all this devastation and the sun is shining, and you're like, what in the world? Because the one thing that happens, it always shines. It's not always the brightest every day, and that's us, right? So I'm not bubbly jumping up and down every day,
Mhm,
but every
mhm.
day I try to find one thing to be grateful for. And in your grief journey, if that one thing is that I got up today, I'm applauding with you.
That's right. That's right.
I'm applauding with you. You owe it to yourself. Out to me if you just want to talk. I can be reached at a place, the number four, the heart, at gmail.com. Also, my website is a place for the number four, the heart, .com. And you can reach out to me and just say, hey, I need to talk. I need, can we get together? Can, we talk, or I do Zoom and we can talk over Zoom. And, sometimes you just need to unload it and
Right.
don't carry it. Don't carry it. Pam, they have their once a month sessions. If you can be there, be there. Because even if you think that you are over it and you think you are past it, I bet you'll find something that you will say, this really helped me today. And thinking about that somebody else is also watching how you're doing it. And because you can do it, you're giving the strength to somebody else that says, if they made it, I can make it too.
Right. Well, thank you so much, y'all. This evening, Facebook family, this evening we've had Dr. Sonya Strider, who is with us from Stone Mountain, Georgia. And she loves this work. This is a part of the work that she does, helping the grief community and providing this, her nonprofit, Jenny's Porch Foundation, and the wonderful Sunshine, Beyond the Sunshine Mother's Day brunch that she does annually. Listen, the work is never done. And so, if God leads you to sow into what she does, please reach out to her via her website. Again, for those of you who are just coming on, we will be meeting in person for the grief support meeting for the month of March on March 8th at 11 o'clock at our same location. You can find it on the website, as well as we will be back again doing this live virtually so that we can reach any person at any place on March 27th at 6:30 Central Standard Time. And we will continue to do this work. And until then, guys, you all be blessed and enjoy your evening.
Have a great week. Bye bye.